What's going on YouTube? This is ParkerLad88 coming at you with another video. And in this video, guys, we're going to be doing another installment of the Gettin Good series. But in this episode specifically, what we're going to be talking about is neutral and pressure. So, let's go ahead and get started. So guys, you may be wondering to yourselves, let's say you're on YouTube and you're watching some player matches from your favorite fighting video game, or you're watching like an online tournament like CEO or Evo or something like that, and what do you see? You see a lot of this, and a lot of this, and a lot of this, a whole lot of this, right? And you hear the commentators or you hear the people who are playing the game talk a lot about the word neutral. They'll be like, wow, this character or this player really knows how to conduct themselves in the neutral. This character has really good neutral tools. Neutral, 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 neutral. Well, what exactly does that mean? For people who, don't play a whole lot of fighting games or are just getting into fighting games, what does the word neutral actually mean? What does it refer to? It refers to this. What you see right here, this is the neutral. Whenever you or your opponent are not in the middle of a combo, when you or your opponent are not in the middle of like some kind of oki setup, like you knock your opponent on the ground and you're trying to do something to open them up or to make them or try to bait them into doing something unsafe or something like that so you can capitalize on them and get a combo or maintain pressure on them, something like that. Everything else that happens outside of that, that is neutral. Neutral, in my experience, is about screen control. It's about putting yourself and your team, your character, in the most advantageous situation so that they can use the tools that they have while putting your opponent at a disadvantageous situation. What we're going to talk about is, how do we do this? How do we do this in fighting video games, and what neutral-specific tools are specific to Power Rangers? Now, neutral generally comes down to a couple of things across the board, with fighting video games. For characters with more generic neutral tools, it's a little bit easier, but for a game like Power Rangers, neutral is very difficult to talk about because it's very character specific. But let's go ahead and talk about what we can talk about that's universal for neutral. And there are going to be a couple things. Number 1, movement. Number 2, normals. Number 3, your character's specific tool set. And number 4, because this is a tag style fighter, it's going to come down to, I'm sure you can guess it, assists. Assists are a very important part of neutral in tag style fighters, and that's no different for Power Rangers. But let us start with movement. Sorry guys, I actually had to switch up my team so I could talk to you about this next part. There actually are a couple of universal techniques I do want to talk about for Power Rangers Battle for the Grid after thinking about it a little bit more. The first thing I want to talk about is dashing. Now, dashing is an easy way for you to close the distance or to gain distance from your opponent. In Power Rangers Battle for the Grid, you can also cancel attacks out of your dash just by pressing an attack button to give your normals more range. This, in turn, gives you more presence in the neutral. Now, in order to up your mobility, there are a couple things we need to talk about. Number 1, we need to talk about wave dashing, and then we also need to talk about attack dashing. Now, these techniques are very similar in terms of just, increasing your mobility, but I just kind of want to talk about them anyway. So let's talk about the wave dash first. Now, I did make a video talking about wave dashing and comparing characters' wave dashes to other characters' wave dashes to their normal dashes to see which version of mobility is more effective for that character, but let's just go ahead and briefly touch on it again. In order to do a wave dash in this game, you can dash by pressing the light and medium attack buttons together. This gives you a dash. In order to cancel the recovery animation for your dash, at the end of your dash, you press the down button. You will then, after that, do the light and medium attack buttons again, followed by down, and again, and down. And if you do that rhythmically, you get what is known as the wave dash. Now, the other form of mobility is the attack dash. And in order to do this, you just rhythmically press the light and medium attack buttons together, and you will get that. I bring these up because, as I've talked about before in my other videos, not every character's wave dash is better than their attack dash, and so on and so forth. Some characters, they can't even do an attack dash. and they only have the wave dash, but their wave dash is pretty good. It's up to you guys in order to go into training mode and figure out which form of movement is best for that characters. Some characters, like Zed for instance, they can't even do a wave dash, and he can't cancel his attacks out of his dash. He has to wait for his dash to finish in order for him to start doing attacks and whatnot. So just a couple of things to think about. Now, the other type of movement I want to talk about is going to be the dash jump, or the super jump. I actually don't think it has a specific name. But anyway, what you guys do is you will start with a dash, and then you will press up and forward, and you will get a jump that covers a lot more distance than a regular jump would. It covers about 2 jumps worth, depending on how floaty or how high that character jumps. Every character can do this, even Zed. He just has to wait for his dash to finish, but you do it the same way. You double tap the dash, and then as soon as you're finished with that, you do up and forward, and you'll get that technique.
Oh, now you're in trouble.
So those were a couple things that you guys should definitely get used to as far as the movement, which will also help you in the neutral. Anyway, so just wanted to share those things. Let's go ahead and get back to the rest of the video. Now in this video, I'm not going to teach you specifically how to move in Power Rangers, because I can't do that. I really can't. Not because I don't understand it or whatever, but like I said, outside of games that have more generic tools, like Dragon Ball FighterZ is a very good example of this. Dragon Ball FighterZ, like a lot of anime style fighters, have more tools, generic tools that everybody has access to. Everybody in Fighters has a Ki Blast, so, or in some capacity, except for maybe like some characters like Hit. He doesn't have a Ki Blast, I don't think, but you know, a lot of characters in that game, they have Ki Blast, and how good their Ki Blasts are dictates how much better or worse they are, you know, at neutral. Every character has a double jump. Every character has an air dash. Every character has a dragon rush where they can just home directly to your opponent or whatever. But for a game like this, it's a little bit more different. You kind of just have to play around with your specific character, get used to their movement and whatnot, and then figure that out. But what I can do is give you some examples of how movement is important. This whole thingy right here, where you see opponents moving back and forth, just kind of dancing with each other, I mean, it's kind of like real life. Like, you know, when you see UFC or boxing or whatever, the competitors are trying to put themselves in what situation is most advantageous for them. And while technically higher mobile characters should have the advantage in a neutral situation, that's not always the case. Character specific. Zed, he's a slow-moving character. Look at him. Look how slow he is. But what does he have? He has a teleport dash. What does he have? Long-range normals. So for other characters, like let's say Goldar, for instance, who has stubbier normals, he relies on mostly air attacks in order to get in, so he needs to be closer than Zed does. So once again, it's character specific. While Zed is slow, he has these long-range normals, which means that he doesn't have to come in very far in order to be threatening. Likewise, against characters with stubbier normals, he doesn't have to commit as hard. That means that you have to come to Zed, which is exactly what Zed wants. So that's an example of how movement is important. With that, I also kind of want to talk about jumping. Jumping is effective and the riskiest thing that you can do in Power Rangers if you don't protect yourself, because you can't block launchers in this game. Let's see here. I'm sure you've seen like a lot of up backing and stuff like that. Yeah. Jumping like appropriately is also a large part of dictating yourself in neutral, you know, along with your movement, but you have to be very, very careful with your jumps, because if you jump at the wrong time and somebody anti-airs you and heaven forbid knows how to do a combo, that's your life. Your life is gone. Now you might not lose a character, or you may. You might not lose a character, but you will lose a large chunk of your life, and if you took a couple of hits before that, you can die from one jump in. So, jumping is important because the freedom of jumping is there because you can actually block in the air. So if someone wants to come up and hit you, you can still block them. So jumping around is also an important part of conducting yourself in the neutral, along with dashing, walking, and all that kind of stuff. But you guys have to figure that out for yourselves by playing around with your character and being mindful of your jump-ins. If you're going to jump in, and if you can, cover yourself with an assist. I'm actually pretty bad at this, and call it playing other fighters where you can't actually call your assist whenever you jump. I don't know, but I'm bad at this. Don't be like me. Get used to calling assist when you jump in, so at least you have some form of cover. Anyway, let's move on to the next thing. We're going to talk about our normals. As I alluded to before, differences between like Goldar and Zed. Zed doesn't have the mobility, but he's got the normal presence. Goldar, he doesn't have the normal presence, but he does have the mobility. So their neutrals are going to be very, very different. Zed doesn't have to threaten very far. He doesn't have to come in very far in order to commit. This means that people have to come to him. So this makes his neutral on paper a little bit better than some other characters. It puts him a cut above some other characters. That's going to be kind of how it is for a lot of games. How good your buttons are going to dictate, what control you have on the screen combined with other things. Be it that I just went over those examples in combination with the movement, we can move on to the next most important thing, and that is your character's specific toolset. It's kind of easy to say that characters who have projectiles, for instance, kind of have a cut above characters who don't. Or how strong character projectiles are kind of put them a step above other characters as far as the neutral. And to a certain extent that is right, to a certain extent that is not so right. Like for instance, for Zed here, Zed's basic projectile is his putty. The homing blast and the putties seem threatening, but do you see how long the startup time is on the homing blast? That makes this as a form of like lockdown, zoning, not as great as you would think, but the idea is there that you can basically put a bunch of stuff on the screen to put you on the front foot and put your opponent on the back foot. So in that regard, that is important. Going back to Goldar for a second, once again, Goldar, not really much of a threat from anywhere outside of where he can do this. I'm sure you see Goldars do this all the time. If you are at long range, or if you are at full screen, Goldar isn't nearly as much of a threat. Subsequently, if you have tools that can keep Goldar away from you, like projectiles or something like that, like Movie Blue and his giant beam blast when he has a charge or whatever, those things can make it difficult for Goldar to get in. But when he starts getting around this range, this is where Goldar starts to become a lot more dangerous, and that just kind of comes with an understanding of your character's toolset. I like to hope that through my tutorials and through my What Changed videos, I kind of gave you guys a good idea of what tools the characters have available to them, but it's kind of up to you to, go into training, go into matches, play around with their tools, and learn what they have access to and, how those things work out for you. Alright, going back to Zed now. So, character toolset, very important. The last thing, and you could argue where this kind of falls in the totem of like importance in neutral whatever, it's definitely really, really important for tag style fighters, and that is going to be your assists. Because guess what your assists do? Your assists kind of play into the whole idea of let's put stuff on the screen. It's pretty important. And you generally want to have an assist that can kind of shift the pacing of a match more in your favor. Trina's assist is a good example of this because it covers a good amount of range, she comes in quickly, and it puts your opponent in block stun for a long time. This can allow you to actually move towards your opponent if that's what you like to do, or it can also allow you to shut up shop with like long range buttons, specials, and all that kind of stuff. So those are kind of like the four pillars, I believe, of neutral, kind of across the board, but also specifically for Power Rangers. And I hope I actually explained that to you guys pretty well. So now that we're done talking about the basics of neutral, let's briefly touch on the basics of pressure. What is pressure? The way I like to think about pressure in my brain is kind of like a combo, but as opposed to your opponent being in hit stun, they're in block stun. When you put your opponent in a pressure situation, what you're trying to do is one of two things. You're either trying to quote-unquote pressure your opponent into making a bad decision, like, for instance, you're doing all this stuff, everything's all great and good or whatever, you think your opponent's going to EX, so you just kind of wait for them to block because your opponent's like, I'm covered by so many things, I just want to get out of this, so they do EX, right? That's what you want. You want them to do something unsafe so that you can capitalize on that with either more pressure or a combo that will kill them. The other thing you can do is put your opponent in a situation where they press a button at an inopportune time. You're still pressing buttons, you put your opponent in a situation where they think they can press a button, but you end up just bopping them with another button. Like, I don't think I can do a particularly good example with Goldar, but I can give you an idea of what it's like. So for Goldar, let's say I do this little number here, and then I go into the Goldar charge with forward special, and then after that, I call Trini assist. Now, Goldar's forward hard is inherently, or sorry, not forward hard, his forward special is unsafe. The opponent knows this. I'm sure even if you don't know this, something in you says, that doesn't look safe because look at this recovery time that he has. Something about you says, that looks like I can hit a button there. But haha, here's Trini assist, you press a button, you get clipped by it, and then all of a sudden you're eating full Goldar combo. That's one thing that pressure lets you do. The other thing, and the main thing that pressure lets you do, is conditioning. Being in block stun for so long, you can condition your opponent to do what you want them to do and set them up for what your ultimate game plan is. Let's take Zed for example. Doing Zed's standing hard auto combo, once again like forward special from Goldar, is highly, highly unsafe. But guess what? The assist allows us to compensate from this and will allow Zed to recover so I can go for what my ultimate game plan is, which is either going to be Zed's light auto combo if they're still in block stun for an overhead situation they might not see coming because it is pretty quick, or going for throw, which is something that a lot of characters do, where they will go for a sequence like this. Your opponent will still be in block stun, and then you'll just, go for the throw, and then you'll go for like full punish after that, your combo or whatever the heck. That's another thing that pressure allows you to do. But how do we, establish the pressure? How do we get it started? How do we get it going? Your assists play a large part of that. Assists can do one of two things. They can either get your pressure started, or as you saw in those examples, they can keep your pressure going. Trini is a really good example of this because it covers a good amount of range, and look how long it puts them in the blasted block stun for. The other thing that we do in order to establish pressure is kind of getting used to what we can special cancel with our characters and what we can't. Now, I could sit here and make a video of like every character's like special cancelable stuff and non-special cancelable stuff, but I'm not going to do that. You guys just kind of have to take your characters and play around with what they can special cancel and what they can't. Like for instance, we established that, or we didn't establish, but Zed's hard auto combo, the whole thing is ridiculously unsafe, but it's also not special cancelable because once again that would make it safe. This is where the assists kind of compensate for that, as I gave in the examples from before. But for instance, the first part of his hard auto combo, so just the standing heavy, it is special cancelable, and you kind of have to play around with those things. Generally, normals across the board of any kind in Power Rangers Battle for the Grid are special cancelable. So your lights, mediums, heavies, and your crouchings. Launchers I do not think are special cancelable, which assists can compensate for as well. But as far as like how auto combos and stuff work, you kind of just have to play around with that stuff. So like for instance, Mastodon Sentry, his full hard auto combo is special cancelable, unlike Zed's hard auto combo, which is not, at least on block anyway. On hit, Zed can cancel it, I believe, like an EX and stuff like that, but on block, as you guys can see, it is not special cancelable. The other thing that you should get used to is the chain combo system in this game. Going from a crouching light, medium, standing heavy, or just whatever you guys want to do, whatever will allow you to recognize, hey, my opponent is in block stun, I need to turn my pressure brain on and figure out what I want to do from there. So you might get a sequence kind of like this, right? And that's like a basic pressure, blocking sequence. Do another example with Goldar, where we do something like this. We do Goldar charge, call assist afterwards, something like that, right? Now, Zed's not a good assist for like pressure in that situation, but that's kind of the way it works. That's kind of the flow. It feels like a combo, but the opponent's in block stun, and you're looking for those things to say, my opponent's in block stun, I need to have my mix-up brain on, or whatever I want to do, whatever my game plan is. And guys, that's pretty much how the way pressure works. So that will do it for this video as a whole. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. Let me know what you think. I hope I explained this stuff well, and I will be back at you later with future videos. This is Parker Lad, and I will see you guys next time.